News Channel 5 network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris on this wet Wednesday in downtown Nashville. Sit back and enjoy the program this morning. You're welcome to join in the conversation either here on the Plus. You're watching right now. We'll get the phone number up if you want to call. And if you want to message us as well, I'm following as we go along on Facebook as we do. It's going to be at Facebook, newschannel5.com. If you want to go to that and join in the conversation with us this morning, message us along those lines. We've got several interesting topics to discuss with our guest this morning. He's a regular and has been for some time now. Davidson County Sheriff Daron Hall is now joining us live and direct. Sheriff, where are you and what are those footballs over your right shoulder?
Yeah, so I'm in my office at my house, and I guess this looks like the walls are kind of bare, so I thought, well, there's a corner of the room, and I think there's a ball from maybe when I was the president of ACA. It looks like, I forget, my son was a high school quarterback here in town, loved football, so we traveled all over the country with that, and so a lot of this is his stuff, I guess, but a place to sit and have a meeting, I guess.
Well, I see, and you've got a panoramic shot of, I guess, Neyland Stadium right behind you, right?
Actually, that is Lambeau Field.
Oh, is it Lambeau? Okay, I thought I saw orange in there. So that's the Green Bay Packers, Lambeau Field. That's awesome, too.
Yeah, I'm a Titans fan, but I grew up a Packer fan. My granddad went to the first Super Bowl, first championship game, and I grew up loving the Packers and got to go up there when the Tennessee Oilers played, I guess, years ago. So,
yep.
But yeah, my loyalty's still here as soon as we get back to playing.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, listen, it's good to see you, and you're looking well. Just have several things to touch bases on with you this morning. Some COVID-related, and some related to that crazy case involving Mark Friedman with some new developments yesterday. We'll get into that in just a moment, and we'll take phone calls, and people can message. Let me ask you first. We're in the phase-in. I see that you each day, and I forget what the numbers were yesterday, each week rather, update any COVID cases behind bars in the Davidson County Jail. Where do we stand, and have you seen any trend one way or the other, whether or not they've increased?
Yeah, so we've had a total of 21 inmates positive over the period of time, and all of those have recovered. So today we're at what we call zero positives, but we have some 31 inmates that are in restrictions, basically either symptomatic, awaiting results, or tested and awaiting results. And so that's kind of we're awaiting some of those numbers. But we have not seen that, that huge spike. We had some advantages that were just built in. It was luck, to be honest with you, Nick, because, we had the new building we're opening. We could use it to separate people. And so there's a lot of things, luck in the sense of facilities, but our staff worked extremely hard. Our medical provider, it's been in my time, probably the most challenging housing environment I've ever seen. And, there's been many other airborne diseases and things that we deal with, and from scabies to, lice to things that are very contagious, but nothing like this. And we've also had 9 staff positive, and 6 of those have recovered, but we have 3 that are still home. And I've been saying this a long time, and I hope people don't get offended by it, but the police and fire personnel in our country and our community are always do a very difficult job and very challenging. But to be honest with you, the first responder terminology is overused in this case. To me, a healthcare provider where you're housing people who are sick, or a long-term care facility where you're housing older people who become sick, or a jail or prison, are far more difficult than the front line. And I know it's popular, politically popular, to talk about, police fire, because their job is out in the streets, and it's typically very dangerous and difficult. And even in this case, there's danger involved with arresting a person that might be COVID, but it's nowhere near the difficulty of housing 1,000 people, of which several hundred become positive. So I just want to just a shout out to all the people who are working in jails and prisons who don't really get the credit they deserve on a daily basis. But in this situation, and I have said this from the beginning, it is far more difficult. We've had the most staff positive in the entire government. Our staff don't make what police officers make. or fire personnel, but they deserve more credit than they're getting in situations like this. You see a lot of things called first responders. Well, corrections people aren't first responders, but they are doing a yeoman's task in the most difficult of situations, and really don't get the credit they deserve. It's an incredibly difficult situation, and that's not picking on the police. They have dangerous jobs for fear of being shot and harmed and sued and all the things that go into the world of policing. But in this case, the people who are in a much more difficult environment are the people who are in jails and prisons working and living, and also hospitals and long-term care health facilities. And I like my friends in the police and fire departments, but they're getting more credit in this situation than they probably deserve.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because it is a difficult situation. We hear so much about maybe the inmates and keeping them safe and have it spread, but you got to forget all the employees you have that are in there with them, and it's about keeping them all protected. And to that regard, I'm just curious at this point, as things stand, first of all, do you have most, or are you still in the process of moving all the inmates to the new facility now? Or, how far before, you make that transition fully from out in Harding Place?
Yeah, Nick, and probably the bigger disappointment in all of this is that we've had to back our way into the new facility just because of the way it's all played out. I know we'll talk about Friedman here in a minute too, but but with that event that started, and then of course COVID came right on the heels of that, we've actually, I keep calling it, backed our way in. What we really did was we opened it up as a medical facility for 2 to 3 weeks. It feels like I forget exactly what day we started that, but we moved the folks who were positive or needed to be isolated into the facility first, and then slowly but surely, and as we speak today, I think there's nearly 500 people over there. And it's fully functioning. We opened it up on Mother's Day, was the actual day of our first booking and processing, and so it's operating the way it should be. We just got there in a unique way, and fantastic facility, and our staff are doing a great job in an unusual time, but it's up and running.
Okay, and the other question, and I know you may have dealt with this some. Other jails and some of the prisons continue to talk about it, and we hear about it from folks with loved ones behind bars. Have you had any more early releases? Is that something you're still processing as you hear from a DA or a judge that here's an individual that's been locked up, he's near the end of his sentence, and he's 60 years old, let's just get him out of there? I mean, have some of those happened with you, as we've heard at some of the other jails, even though I think it's gone into a slower process? We know that it's not a blanket thing, it's case by case. How about with you guys?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We just to kind of put a baseline out there, you would have expected us to be around 1,300 people in jail today. That's probably the number we would be at had this not happened. Instead, we're around 950, and so just to know that there's 300 or so plus that are not in custody today. A lot of those are just awaiting trial from the streets, or were released on pretrial release and other programs. And there were some that were released via the court, letting their sentence expire earlier. And so, and then the police are writing more citations. And so a lot of that has reduced the number coming in. But there are ongoing conversations with the district attorney's office and the public defender's office when we have high risk cases or people coming in the system or obviously involved. But I had asked just kind of somewhat of an arbitrary number. We needed to get our population down so we could spread people out in our beds, and we needed to get it down around 1,000. And so we were at 1,300 at one point, and we're down, like I said, now the facility's open. We're really functioning almost in a normal and housing situation, except for some of those people that are restricted. But we're nervous, like everybody else, that if you get a positive case or two inside of our facility, it can quickly turn into 100 or so. And that's very dangerous and difficult to deal with. So there's not as much of an effort to early release anymore. I think everyone's just kind of open-minded as we go. If we have certain cases we need to work on.
All right, listen, Sheriff, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines, take a couple calls for you, and then we're going to jump in. Stick around, everyone, because when we come back, it is a plot from a movie, and it's going to. And we're going to talk about if and when this movie's made, who is going to play the sheriff and others. But I mean, the story behind this Alex Friedman case and the weapons being hidden in the newly constructed jail, just amazing. We learned more yesterday as now Friedman is facing some additional charges at the federal level. But boy, stick around for that, and you know the sheriff will go into more detail. That's just mind-boggling. So we'll be back with more right after this. Stay with us.